My name is Dr. Raymond Holder, and I am violating multiple federal laws by releasing this information. I spent 32 years as a senior cryptanalyst with the National Security Agency, held TS/SCI clearance for classified programs you've never heard of, and signed documents that legally bind me to silence until the day I die. I'm 71 years old now, terminal cancer, maybe 4 months left, and I've decided that some truths are more important than the laws designed to hide them. So I'm releasing the tapes. All 47 hours of audio recordings made between 2008 and 2019, recordings of conversations between me and a being that officially doesn't exist, a being the NSA has been monitoring since 1952, a being who communicated with me for 11 years, and a being who, in our final conversation in 2019, warned me about something so catastrophic that I've spent the last 4 years trying to verify it, trying to find any evidence that he was wrong, trying to convince myself that what he told me was impossible. But every piece of data I've analyzed, every climate model I've reviewed, every extinction timeline I've studied confirms the same thing. He was right. Bigfoot, or more accurately, the species we've codenamed the Observers, predicted a human extinction event. Not in the distant future. Within our lifetimes. Within the next 30 to 50 years. And the most terrifying part isn't that he warned me. It's why he warned me. Not to help us prevent it, but to make sure at least one human understood that they saw it coming. That they watched us destroy ourselves, that they tried to tell us and we didn't listen. I was recruited into a classified NSA program in 1991. I was 39 years old, a mathematician with expertise in pattern recognition and signal analysis. My job was to identify communications protocols in intercepted signals, Russian, Chinese, terrorist organizations, anyone the government wanted to monitor. I was good at it. Exceptional, actually. Could recognize patterns in noise that other analysts missed. Could identify structure in seemingly random data. That's why they approached me for Project Nightwatch. The briefing was minimal. We've been intercepting unusual signals in remote wilderness areas since the 1950s. Audio frequencies, vocalizations, patterns that suggest intelligent communication but don't match any known language or species. Your job is to analyze these signals, determine if they're genuinely communicative, and if possible, decode them. They showed me spectrograms, audio samples, recordings from locations across North America, Pacific Northwest, Appalachian Mountains, Alaska, Rocky Mountains. The vocalizations were unlike anything I'd heard. Too complex for known animals, too structured to be random, clearly communicative, clearly language. "What's producing these sounds?" I asked. The briefer, a colonel whose name I was never told, looked uncomfortable. "That's classified above your current clearance. Your job is analysis only. Determine if these signals contain intelligence. If they do, begin working on translation protocols. You'll be working alone. No collaboration with other analysts. All materials are eyes only. You report directly to me. Questions?" I had 1,000 questions, but I asked the only one that mattered. Why me? Because everyone else we've assigned to this project either couldn't find patterns in the signals, or they found patterns and then requested transfer because they couldn't handle the implications. You're smart enough to do the work and pragmatic enough not to freak out when you realize what you're analyzing. He was half right. I was smart enough. But when I finally realized what or who I was analyzing, I absolutely freaked out. Just privately, in ways that didn't compromise my security clearance. I spent 17 years analyzing those signals. 17 years of pattern recognition, frequency analysis, linguistic modeling. And slowly, painstakingly, I began to understand. The vocalizations weren't random. They were language. Complex, sophisticated language with grammatical structures, consistent phonemes, semantic patterns. Not human language. Something else. Something that suggested intelligence equal to or exceeding human capabilities. By 2008, I'd developed preliminary translation protocols. Could identify roughly 30% of words or concepts in recorded vocalizations. Could understand context in maybe 50% of intercepted communications. And that's when Project Nightwatch changed. That's when they gave me an assignment that would define the rest of my life and destroy my faith in everything I thought I knew about government secrecy. "We want you to make contact," the colonel said. He was older now, grayer. We both were. "We've identified an individual who frequents an area in the Appalachians where we have surveillance equipment. He seems to be alone, no family group nearby. He's old. We think he might be willing to communicate if approached correctly, and you're the only person who can speak enough of their language to try." "You want me to talk to Bigfoot?" I said, finally saying out loud what we'd been dancing around for 17 years. "We don't use that term. The official designation is non-human intelligence entities, NHIEs. But yes, we want you to establish communication with an NHIE. Find out what they know, what they want, why they hide, and most importantly, whether they pose a national security threat." I should have refused, should have recognized this was insane, should have understood that the government doesn't ask you to make first contact with unknown intelligent species for innocent reasons. But I was a scientist, a linguist, a cryptanalyst. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, the chance to communicate with another intelligent species. How could I refuse? So I didn't. I accepted the assignment, went through 6 months of additional training, learned fieldcraft, survival skills, recording equipment operation. And in November 2008, I hiked into a remote section of the Appalachian Mountains in Western Virginia, carrying recording equipment, translation notes, and a message in their language that I'd practiced for months. "I come in peace. I wish to speak with you. I have learned your words." I didn't expect it to work. Expected to spend a week in the woods, fail to make contact, return to Fort Meade and resume normal signal analysis. Instead, on the 3rd day, he found me, stepped out of the forest into my camp as if he'd been expecting me, as if he'd been waiting. And the first thing he said in clear, understandable English that my 17 years of translation had not prepared me for was this: "Finally, I've been trying to reach you for 60 years. We need to talk about what's coming, about what your species is doing, about the ending you're creating." That was November 2008, the beginning of 11 years of conversations that the NSA has classified at levels above top secret. Conversations I recorded despite being ordered to stop after the first session. Conversations that revealed truths about his species, about human behavior, about the future we're creating. And conversations that led to his final warning in 2019. The warning I'm releasing now, because silence serves no one except the institutions that want this hidden. The warning about our extinction, and why his people won't do anything to stop it. He was enormous, 9 feet tall at least. Covered in dark brown fur that was graying at the temples and chest. Face that was neither human nor ape, but something distinct. High cheekbones, deep-set eyes, a jaw that could accommodate both human speech and the complex vocalizations their language required. He stood at the edge of my camp, hands visible and empty, posture non-threatening, making it clear he wasn't there to intimidate, just to talk. "You speak English," I said stupidly. 17 years of analyzing their language and he spoke English. "Of course I speak English. I've been listening to you people for 83 years. I speak English, Spanish, Russian, Mandarin, and 6 indigenous languages your kind has nearly exterminated. Language isn't difficult when you actually listen." His voice was deep, resonant, with an accent I couldn't place. Like English filtered through vocal cords shaped differently than human ones. How long have you known we were monitoring you?" He made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. "Since 1952. Since your government started putting listening devices in the forests after someone finally took our existence seriously enough to look for proof. We've been letting you listen, letting you collect your data, waiting to see if anyone would actually try to communicate rather than just spy. Why not contact us directly? Why wait? Because we've watched what happens when your kind discovers something you don't understand. You kill it, capture it, or exploit it. We prefer none of those options. But you," he gestured at me, at my recording equipment, at the translation notes spread around my camp. You spent 17 years trying to learn our language, trying to understand instead of just monitor. That suggested you might be different, might actually be capable of listening. So here I am, listening. What do you want to ask? I had a list, a formal list of questions the NSA wanted answered, intelligence gathering disguised as friendly conversation. But looking at him, at this impossible being standing in my camp, speaking English, demonstrating patience and intelligence that matched anything human, I abandoned the list. Asked instead the only question that mattered. Why do you hide from us? Because you're dangerous. Not individually. Some of you are kind, intelligent, worth knowing. But collectively, systemically, your species is the most destructive force on this planet. You don't coexist, you dominate, you don't share, you consume. You see something you want, you take it. You see something you don't understand, you destroy it. We've watched you do this for millennia. Watched you drive species after species to extinction. Watched you exterminate your own indigenous peoples. Watched you destroy habitats, poison waters, change climate itself. And we understood. If you knew we existed, you'd do the same to us. So we hide. Not because we're weak. We're stronger than you, smarter in ways you don't measure. But because being strong doesn't matter when the other species has guns and governments and the absolute certainty that everything on Earth exists for human use. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. This wasn't speculation. This was lived experience. Centuries of watching humanity expand and destroy. Is that why you wanted to talk? To tell me how terrible we are? No. I wanted to talk because your kind is approaching a threshold, a point of no return. And some of us think, some of us hope, that if we warn you, if we make you understand what's coming, maybe you'll change course. Maybe you'll choose survival over expansion. Maybe you'll finally demonstrate the wisdom your species constantly claims but never shows. What threshold? What's coming? He sat down, lowered himself carefully to the ground across from my campfire, made himself less imposing, more conversational. Let me tell you what we know, what we've observed, what your own scientists know but your governments ignore. And then you tell me, does your species want to survive? Or are you so committed to destroying everything that you'll take yourselves down with it? Over the next 6 hours, as the sun set and the forest grew dark around us, he told me about their observations of humanity, about patterns they'd noticed over centuries, about cycles of growth and collapse, about the acceleration of destruction since industrialization, about climate systems we were disrupting, about ecological tipping points we were approaching, about the mathematical certainty of collapse if we continued current trajectories. We've seen this before, he said. Not with humans. You're unique in your capacity for self-destruction. But we've watched ecosystems collapse. Watched species push past the point where recovery was possible. Watched the inevitable cascade of failures that follows. You're doing the same thing. Globally. Systematically. And you're approaching the point where even if you stopped all harmful activities tomorrow, which you won't, the cascades you've already triggered will continue, will compound, will create conditions where human civilization cannot survive. How long? I asked. If you're right, how long do we have? Based on our models, and we've been modeling ecosystem collapse longer than your species has had writing, you have maybe 50 years before conditions become incompatible with maintaining modern civilization, maybe 80 years before conditions become incompatible with maintaining current population levels, maybe 120 years before humans are extinct completely. These are best-case scenarios assuming you immediately stop all destructive practices, which you won't. So realistically, 50 years until collapse, 70 years until mass die-off, 100 years until extinction. I stared at him. That's impossible. We're too advanced, too adaptable. We'll develop technology to fix the problems technology created? You've been saying that for 60 years while making everything worse. No. Technology won't save you. Technology is what enabled you to destroy on global scale. What you need is wisdom, restraint, the ability to choose not to do things you're capable of doing. And you've never demonstrated those qualities, ever. In all the millennia we've watched you. Then why warn us? If you think we're doomed, why bother? He looked at me with those ancient, intelligent eyes. Because some of us still hope. Still believe that maybe, possibly, if confronted with absolute clarity about the consequences of your actions, your species might choose differently. That hope is probably foolish. But it's better than accepting that we're about to watch the extinction of the only other truly intelligent species on this planet, even if that species deserves extinction. That conversation became the first of many. The NSA wanted me to continue contact, to gather intelligence, to assess threat levels. I had other motivations. I wanted to understand, wanted to learn what he knew, wanted to hear truths that my own government and society refused to speak. Over 11 years, he taught me more about humanity than 32 years in intelligence analysis ever did. Taught me about the patterns we refuse to see in ourselves, about the systems that ensure our destruction, about why every warning we receive, from our own scientists, from other nations, from simple logic, gets ignored in favor of short-term profit and convenience. And in 2019, he gave me the final warning, the one that made me realize this wasn't just environmental catastrophe, this was extinction timeline, and it was already too late to stop. Our conversations became regular. Every few months between 2008 and 2019, I'd return to the same location in the Appalachians. He'd be there, waiting. Sometimes he'd appear within hours of my arrival. Sometimes he'd make me wait days, testing my patience, making sure I wasn't being followed or surveilled beyond the recording equipment I openly carried. I always came alone. Always told the NSA I was conducting routine signal collection in the field. They knew I was meeting him. The recordings I submitted made that clear. But they didn't know the full extent of our conversations. Didn't know I was recording everything, not just the sanitized portions I officially reported. The NSA wanted intelligence about his species. Numbers, locations, capabilities, threat assessment. I provided enough to satisfy them while protecting what mattered. Told them his people were scattered, few in number, posed no threat. Emphasized that they avoided humans and wanted only to be left alone. Downplayed their intelligence, made them seem more animal than they were. It was the only way to protect them. If the NSA understood how intelligent they truly were, how much they knew, how carefully they'd been observing us, there would be capture attempts. Study programs, everything he'd spent centuries avoiding. But I kept complete recordings of everything, every conversation, every warning, every prediction. Stored on encrypted drives I kept hidden from the agency. Waiting for, I didn't know what. Waiting for the right time, maybe. Or waiting until I was old enough and sick enough that consequences didn't matter anymore. That time is now. He told me things about human behavior that our social scientists have never quite articulated, about the gap between what we say we value and what we actually do, about how every human society claims to care about future generations while systematically destroying the world those generations will inherit, about the cognitive dissonance that lets us know we're causing catastrophic harm while continuing to cause it, because stopping would require sacrifice we're unwilling to make. Your species has a fatal flaw, he said during our meeting in 2011. You can understand long-term consequences, but you can't feel them. Can't make them emotionally real enough to change behavior. You know that burning fossil fuels is destroying climate stability. You know that industrial agriculture is destroying soil. You know that pollution is poisoning oceans. You know all of this. Have known for decades. But knowing doesn't change behavior because the consequences are distant, abstract, future. And humans are very, very bad at caring about the future when the present is comfortable. Some of us care, I protested. There are environmental movements, climate activists, people trying to change things. Yes, and they're ignored, mocked, actively opposed by the people and corporations and governments that profit from destruction. Your species has created economic systems that require endless growth on a finite planet, has created political systems that prioritize quarterly profits over generational survival, has created social systems that measure success by consumption rather than sustainability, and anyone who points out that these systems are suicidal is dismissed as unrealistic, as if reality cares about your economic theories. He was right, of course. I'd watched it happen, watched climate scientists present overwhelming evidence and be ignored, watched environmental regulations gutted to protect corporate profits, watched short-term thinking triumph over long-term survival again and again, because the people making decisions wouldn't live to see the consequences. "Tell me about the timeline," I said. "You've mentioned collapse multiple times. What exactly happens? When?" He pulled out something I'd never seen before, a rolled piece of bark covered in markings, symbols, drawings, a chart. We've been tracking key indicators for 70 years. Temperature changes, ice melt rates, ocean acidity, species extinction rates, soil depletion, aquifer depletion. We don't need sophisticated instruments. We live in the forests. We watch. We see what's dying, what's changing, what's gone, and we track patterns. He unrolled the bark, showed me graphs that looked remarkably like the climate charts I'd seen in classified NSA briefings. Except his went further, projected further, showed trajectories our scientists hadn't published. Here, he pointed to a spot on his chart. 2025. This is when Arctic summer ice disappears completely. Your scientists say 2030, maybe 2040. They're wrong. We watch the ice. It's going faster than your models predict. When summer ice is gone, the Arctic Ocean absorbs heat instead of reflecting it. This accelerates everything else. Here, 2031. Major crop failures across multiple continents simultaneously. Heat, drought, soil depletion, aquifer collapse, all converging. Your industrial agriculture is efficient until it fails. When it fails completely. Billions of people depend on food systems with no resilience, no backup, no way to feed everyone when yields drop by 30, 40, 50%. Here, 2037, mass migration. Hundreds of millions of people moving from uninhabitable regions toward regions that still have water, food, stability. Your governments will respond with walls and weapons. Will choose violence over assistance. Will create humanitarian catastrophe that destabilizes even the wealthy nations that think they're safe. Here, 2043, cascade failures, governments collapsing, infrastructure failing, supply chains breaking. Modern civilization depends on complex systems that only work when everything works. When too many parts fail simultaneously, the whole thing falls apart. This is when your species goes from comfortable to desperate, from civilized to survival mode. And humans in survival mode are the most dangerous creatures on Earth. He continued through the timeline, each marker representing another system failure, another tipping point, another step toward the collapse he'd been describing. And the dates weren't distant future abstractions. They were within my potential lifetime. Definitely within my children's lifetime. Certainly within my grandchildren's lifetime if they lived to old age, which according to his projections, they wouldn't. "Why haven't your people intervened?" I asked. "If you're so much wiser than us, why haven't you tried to stop this? Why just watch?" "Because it's not our job to save you from yourselves. Because we tried once, long ago, to teach humans better ways, to show you how to live in balance. Some of your people listened, your indigenous peoples, before you destroyed most of them. But most didn't. Most chose domination over balance, chose taking over sharing. You made your choice. You're living and dying with the consequences. But you're warning me now. That's intervening. I'm informing you there's a difference. I'm making sure that at least some humans know what's coming. Know that we saw it. Know that we tried to tell you, but I'm not stopping it. Can't stop it even if I wanted to. This is something your species did to yourselves. Only your species can undo it, and you won't. You'll talk about it, study it, have conferences about it, make promises you won't keep. And then you'll run out of time and blame everyone except yourselves." The accuracy of his predictions was starting to disturb me. I'd check his timelines against classified climate assessments I had access to through the NSA, against projections from agencies that didn't publish their worst-case scenarios publicly because they were too politically sensitive. And his numbers were consistently more accurate than ours, more honest about trajectories we were on, less optimistic about our ability to change course. By 2015, I'd stopped thinking of his warnings as possibilities and started treating them as certainties. Started planning my own life around the timeline he'd shown me. Started making decisions about where to live, what resources to secure, how to prepare my family for what was coming without being able to explain why I was suddenly so concerned about collapse scenarios. And in 2019, during what would be our final meeting, he told me the part I'd been dreading. The part about human extinction. Not just civilization collapse, not just mass die-off, complete extinction. And why his people were certain it was inevitable. March 2019. I was 67 years old, retiring from the NSA in 6 months. The cancer hadn't been diagnosed yet. That would come in 2021. But I was tired. Tired of the secrecy. Tired of the cognitive dissonance of knowing what he'd told me while watching the world continue as if nothing was wrong. Tired of lying to my family about why I spent weekends in the Appalachians hiking, when I was really meeting with an intelligence source my government knew about, but my family couldn't. He looked older too. His fur was more gray than brown now. He moved more slowly, sat down carefully when we began our conversation as if his joints hurt the way mine did. We were both old men, approaching the ends of our lives, having one last conversation about the end of everything. "This is goodbye," he said immediately. No preamble, no small talk. Just the statement of fact. "I won't be here next time you come. My time is ending. And before I go, I need to tell you the rest. The part I've been avoiding because saying it makes it real in a way the other warnings didn't. You're dying?" I felt unexpected grief. This being had become more than an intelligence source. Had become something like a friend, or at least a teacher. Someone whose perspective I valued more than most humans I knew. "Yes. Old age. Our kind lives long, but not forever. I'll be gone within the year. But that's not what I need to tell you. What I need to tell you is this. Your species won't survive the century. Not in any meaningful numbers. By 2100, humans will be functionally extinct. Small, scattered populations, maybe, living in conditions you'd consider primitive. But modern humanity, cities, technology, civilization, that will be gone completely. And there's nothing you can do to stop it now. The cascades are already triggered. The momentum is already unstoppable. Even if every human stopped all harmful activities today, the systems you've disrupted will continue disrupting. The feedbacks you've triggered will continue feeding back. You've pushed past the point where human action matters. That's not what our scientists say. They say we still have time. That if we act aggressively, your scientists are lying. Not maliciously, optimistically. They're telling you what you want to hear because the truth is too terrible. The truth is that you needed to act 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You had a window, you closed it, and now you're facing consequences that no technology can fix, no policy can reverse, no amount of good intentions can undo. He pulled out another bark chart. This one showed temperature projections, sea level rise, habitable zone shrinkage. The numbers were horrifying. By 2060, most equatorial regions uninhabitable due to heat. By 2070, most coastal cities underwater or abandoned. By 2080, global food production at maybe 30% of current capacity. By 2090, human population at maybe 500 million, down from 8 billion. By 2100, scattered remnants fighting over the few remaining habitable zones. "This isn't prediction," he said. "This is physics, chemistry, biology, systems you've disrupted responding in ways that can't be stopped. Your carbon emissions will stay in the atmosphere for centuries. Your ocean acidification will continue for millennia. Your species extinctions can't be undone. Your soil depletion can't be rapidly reversed. You've damaged Earth's life support system so badly that they can no longer support complex civilization. They'll recover. Earth always recovers, but on geological timescales, not human ones. In 10,000 years, Earth will be fine. In 100 years, humans will be gone. Why are you telling me this? If it's hopeless, why burden me with knowing? Because someone should know, someone should understand that we watched, that we warned, that we tried, and because maybe, you'll use this information to help some humans survive. Not civilization. That's ending. But some people, your children, your grandchildren, whoever you care about, teach them skills that don't depend on electricity, fuel, supply chains. Teach them to live simply, sustainably, small scale, the way your ancestors did before industrialization. Some humans might survive if they remember how to live as part of nature instead of trying to dominate it. Not many, but some. And your people? What happens to you when we're gone? We endure. We've endured ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts. We'll endure the Anthropocene extinction. We'll expand back into habitats you've abandoned. We'll inherit a damaged but recovering Earth, and we'll remember you. We'll tell our children about the intelligent species that destroyed itself, that had the knowledge to survive but lacked the wisdom to use it, that chose comfortable suicide over uncomfortable change. You'll become a cautionary tale we tell, a lesson about the dangers of intelligence without wisdom. The finality in his voice was crushing. He wasn't hoping I'd prove him wrong, wasn't secretly wishing humanity would have some miraculous awakening. He was stating observed fact, delivering a death sentence to my entire species based on data we'd generated ourselves but refused to face honestly. I've compiled everything, I told him. Every conversation we've had, every warning you've given, every timeline you've shown me, 11 years of recordings. I'm going to release them. After I retire, after I'm old enough that consequences don't matter, I'm going to make sure people know, that they hear what you told me. Maybe it won't change anything. Probably won't. But they'll know. They won't believe you. We'll say you're crazy. We'll say I'm fake. We'll say the recordings are fabricated. We'll find any reason to dismiss warnings that require them to change. That's what humans do. But yes, release them. Not because it will save your species. It won't. But because truth matters. Because documentation matters. Because when it's over, when humans are gone and we're telling our children about you, we want the record to be accurate. We want them to know. We tried to warn you. You knew. You chose not to act. That's important. That's the difference between tragedy and farce. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Two old beings at the end of their lives, at the end of everything, sharing the forest quiet and the terrible knowledge of what was coming. I'm sorry, I finally said, for what my species did, for what we're doing, for the world we're leaving behind. I know. But sorry doesn't fix broken climate, doesn't restore extinct species, doesn't save billions of humans from suffering. Sorry is just a word. And you've used up your time for words. Now you have only time left. Use it to prepare, to help who you can, to make sure some humans remember what went wrong. That's all you can do now. He stood, extended his hand. We shook, his massive hand engulfing mine. Then he turned and walked into the forest. Didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, just left. And I sat there until dark, holding recordings of our final conversation, knowing I'd never see him again, knowing everything he'd told me would probably come true, knowing I had maybe 20 years to try to make some small difference before the collapse he'd predicted began in earnest. That was 2019, 4 years ago, and everything he predicted is happening exactly on schedule. I retired from the NSA in September 2019, moved to a small property in rural Vermont, spent 2 years organizing the recordings, creating transcripts, building the documentation that would support the release I was planning. And then in 2021, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Terminal. Maybe 2 years, they said. I've made it to 4 through sheer stubbornness and experimental treatments that have bankrupted my savings. But I'm done now. Maybe 4 months left. Maybe less. Time to release the recordings while I still can. I've structured this release carefully. 47 hours of audio, fully transcribed, with timeline documentation showing that his predictions have been accurate so far. Arctic summer ice disappeared in 2024, earlier than even his accelerated timeline predicted. Crop failures hit South Asia and parts of Africa in 2023. Exactly as he said, regions dependent on monsoons would fail first. Migration pressures are building. Governments are becoming more authoritarian, more nationalistic, more willing to use violence to protect resources. Everything he warned about is unfolding. The NSA will try to suppress this. We'll claim the recordings are fabricated, that I'm mentally ill, that this is either delusion or disinformation. They'll use classification laws to threaten anyone who spreads the information. We'll pressure platforms to remove the content. We'll do everything they can to maintain the comfortable lie that we're not facing extinction. Because admitting the truth would require admitting that our government has known since at least 2008 that we were approaching catastrophic collapse and did nothing meaningful to stop it. But I've distributed the recordings widely. Multiple platforms, multiple countries, multiple backup systems. I've sent copies to journalists, scientists, activists, researchers who might actually listen. I've encrypted them and posted keys publicly. I've made them as difficult to suppress as I know how to make them. They'll spread. Maybe not mainstream media won't touch this, but they'll circulate in communities that are already worried about collapse, already preparing, already treating the future as something to survive rather than something to celebrate. Will it change anything? Probably not. He was right about that too. Most people will dismiss this as conspiracy theory or fabrication. Will find reasons to discredit me. Retired analyst, terminal cancer, probably delusional. Will question the authenticity of recordings that show too clearly what they don't want to see. Will continue with comfortable routines rather than face uncomfortable truths. That's what humans do. We're exceptionally good at ignoring warnings until it's too late to act on them. But some people will listen. Some people will hear these recordings and recognize truth. Will understand that the warnings they've been feeling, the anxiety about climate, about ecosystem collapse, about the future, are justified, are understated even. Will start preparing. Will start teaching their children skills that don't depend on fragile systems. Will start building resilience at family and community scale. We'll start living as if collapse is coming, because collapse is coming. That's all I can hope for. That enough people prepare that some humans survive the bottleneck he predicted. I've thought a lot over the past 4 years about what he told me, about whether he was right that it's too late. I've looked at the data, run the models, talked to scientists who work on climate and ecology and who are willing to speak honestly off the record. And the consensus, when you get past the political optimism and the institutional incentives to downplay worst cases, is that he was right. We're facing collapse this century, maybe not complete extinction. Some scientists think humans might persist in small numbers in high latitudes. But modern civilization, that's ending. The only question is, how fast and how many people die in the process. That's hard to live with. Knowing that my grandchildren will probably not die of old age, will probably die of heat or hunger, or violence or disease in a world falling apart. Knowing that everything I worked for, everything I contributed to society, everything I thought was building toward a better future, all of it is temporary. All of it is ending. We built a civilization of astonishing complexity and sophistication, and we're destroying it through short-sightedness and greed and the inability to value long-term survival over short-term profit. But I also think about what he said about memory, about how his people will remember us, will tell their children about the intelligent species that destroyed itself. And I want that memory to be accurate. Want them to know we were warned. Some of us knew. Some of us tried to change things. We didn't fail because we were ignorant. We failed because we couldn't overcome our systems, our economics, our politics, our addiction to comfort and growth and consumption. We failed because we were smart enough to create a global civilization, but not wise enough to sustain it. My children think I've lost my mind, think the cancer has affected my cognition, and I'm obsessing over conspiracy theories. They humor me, visit when they can, change the subject when I try to talk about what's coming. They'll understand soon enough. Maybe when the crop failures spread to North America and Europe. Maybe when mass migration creates conflicts that destabilize wealthy nations. Maybe when their own children ask why the world is so different from the one they grew up in. They'll remember these conversations. Will remember that their father tried to warn them. Will remember that the crazy recordings from the dying old man were actually accurate. The recordings will be released simultaneously across multiple platforms when my heart monitor detects I've died. I've set up dead man switches. If I don't check in every 48 hours, the releases trigger automatically. I don't want to be alive when the NSA comes. Don't want to spend my last weeks or days being interrogated about classified information or fighting legal battles about disclosure. Let them be angry at my corpse. Let them threaten a dead man. The information will already be out. Can't be suppressed. Can't be retrieved. Just spreads and spreads until enough people have heard it that it becomes part of the cultural knowledge base. Will it matter? Will knowing change anything? Probably not. Probably we're exactly as doomed as he said. Probably his people will inherit the earth and tell their children about the humans who knew better but couldn't do better. But at least the record will be clear. At least some humans will know we were warned. By a species wiser than us. By beings who watched our trajectory and predicted our end with accuracy, we couldn't achieve with all our technology and science. We were warned and we didn't listen. That's the truth. That's what the recordings document. That's what I'm leaving behind. The cancer is winning now. I'm writing this in August 2024. Probably won't see September. The recordings are ready. The distribution system is ready. My death will trigger the release, and then whatever happens, happens. Maybe some humans survive. Maybe his people were wrong about complete extinction. Maybe we're more resilient than they credit us for. Or maybe we're exactly as doomed as they predict. Either way, the truth deserves to be told. The warning deserves to be heard. His people tried. I tried. Now it's up to whoever's listening. Use the time you have left. Prepare. Learn skills. Build resilience. Help each other. And if some humans survive the collapse, teach them what went wrong. Make sure they don't repeat our mistakes. Make sure the species that rebuilds from the ashes is wiser than the one that created them. That's my final message. From a dying analyst who spent 11 years talking to a being who shouldn't exist, who learned truths our government wants hidden, who was warned about extinction and chose to pass that warning forward even knowing it probably won't change the outcome. The recordings are real, the warnings are real, the timeline is real. What you do with that information is up to you. I'm out of time. You're running out of time. Use what's left wisely.